Hello witches, and welcome back to A Coven of Two, where we discuss witchcraft and activism. You can call me Isha, my pronouns are she, they, and today's video is the 1,000 subscribers Q&A, which I think I cheekily am going to call Ask a Witch. I knew that it sounded familiar, and then I think I realized, oh, it's actually how Hearth witch names all her Q&As, so I might cheekily do the same and ask an activist witch. I gathered these questions over the last few weeks. Most of them are anonymous. I gave the option to give them anonymous. Some of them have actually been left as comments. It's a lot, so thank you for the participation and the interest. And let's see if this witch can share some insight or something that is useful at all, and if not, at least entertaining. Hey! But before we get started, let me mention that I've opened a Ko-fi, which is basically an alternative to Patreon that takes less from creators. And on there you can do a one-off donation or a monthly subscription donation to support the work that I do here. And you can also get tarot readings, donate what you can from £5 onwards, and you can get a tarot reading with me, Italian style. So if you would like to support what I do here, you can head on to Ko-fi, and if you do so, thank you so much. It's divided in 4 sections, given the themes. One is witchiness and witchcraft. One, of course, it's activism. One is autism and neurodivergence. And one is queer. And they all apply to me, so rightfully we've gone all the way there. There's also personal, which is understandable. Like if you're here and you, for whatever reason, find interesting or not, even just entertaining, maybe you have questions about the person, so thank you for looking into that. I also start off usually very naive, like I keep reading recently about witches that are like, never share about what you actually do, never share your pictures of your actual altars. And maybe I'm very naive, but I don't know another way to do it, so it might be very rough the way that I give you answers, very raw. I haven't rehearsed this, so let's get into this. I'd say we start with witchy because, hello, activist witch. So supposedly most of you are here for the witchy part. I got a question on Instagram from Aster Perpetua, the amazing Aster. Have you seen my video with her? Go check that out. And Aster asked me, how did you know that magic and witchcraft were the right path for you? I didn't for a long time. If anything, being exposed to witchcraft, cartomancers, a lot of superstitious things in my childhood in Italy made me very skeptical and wary of that, because I don't think that all the esoteric people that were around my mother and that my mother was around were necessarily authentic or well-intentioned. So if you had asked me in recent years even, I would have told you that witchcraft and magic are ooh stuff. So I didn't know, and it was an exercise in humility to understand that I needed something to explore not only my spirituality, but my boundaries and skills and alternatives way to develop the way that I look inside of myself. So that's what happened for me to get interested into witchcraft and magic. Thank you for this question, Aster. Let's start off with a question that rightfully humbles me. I am a recent convert, and I was misjudging the witchcraft community before. Apologies. Let's keep ourselves humble. Then I have a question for Astrological, which is, can I call you one of my mentors? Like, it sounds, I don't want to put the responsibility on you, but at the same time, Astra has not only an amazing knowledge, but also an amazing generosity in taking time to explaining things. She's a mod on the Hearth Witch Discord server. I know her from her podcast, Test Tube and Cauldrons, which perfect combination of science and witchcraft. Love it. So thank you, Astra, for thinking of leaving this for me. First question of Astra. How did you develop your devotion practice to Vesta over time? How did it start versus where is it now? So, my relationship with Vesta started off with an accidental deal. I was in a hard spot. Where did I talk about it? I think in my first video, in my video for Vesta, I talk about it. That's the point. I was facing eviction, and it was a hard time. I then did a spell to secure a property, and while doing that spell, I remembered, oh, isn't Vesta the goddess of the house? And to be honest, thinking back, I have this thought about maybe the simple fact that I thought of Vesta without being something that is familiar to me. I don't remember the last time that I, if ever, heard about her, but that thing in the brain switched and told me, oh, Vesta is the one you want to go for. And yes, it is clearly based on information that I've put in my brain at some point, maybe as a child, but the simple fact that that occurred to me, in hindsight, might have been the call, what people call the call. So that's how it started. I had this flick, and the deal was, you help me secure a place that is safe and comfortable for us, and I will light you a candle for every day that I'm in that house. I didn't necessarily get the house that I asked that for. I got a better one, which in hindsight was absolutely impossible for us to find in the context we were in. So it started off with finding the electric fireplace, and the idea was like, well, that's gonna be the altar, and then every day I'm gonna light a tea light. And that's how it started, and that's how it could probably have stayed there. In time, I've tried different things. I've tried a couple of meditations where at the beginning I still don't know, as you well know, Astra, I don't know if it's my imagination went wild or actually I communicated with her. I have trouble differentiating those things. There's a couple of meditations that I've done that I took note in my grimoire that I don't necessarily remember happening that way, but I wrote that immediately after, so it must have happened that way, where I did this meditation, and amongst other things, I saw this woman made of fire that was holding my hands and calling me figlia, which is in Italian means daughter. And I do remember that I had a sensation in my physical hands after that that was not normal state of hands. So that's one thing that happened. So yeah, nowadays is 2 candles per day, incense, to make sure that if I've done any offense, it's taken care of for that. Please accept this offering to make up for it, basically. I do a tarot reading per week with her. A couple of times I forgot. I hope she's okay with it. And I have been afraid to do more meditations because I don't trust my brain, as you well know. But I should try to do more of that. I have a candle that is dedicated just to do meditation. I also have, I don't remember when I started that, soon enough, like this altar started a year and a day ago. Oh my God, this altar happened a year and a day ago. Apt, because I've been in this house a year and a day today. Oh. At some point I read somewhere that their crystal, their stone is chrysoprase, which is quite unique and not popular, but in Rome specifically it was connected to Vesta. And I found some jewelry that has chrysoprase, so I consecrated this to her. I put her on the altar, like consecrated, like it's not in a very complex way, asking her to protect me even when I'm outside the house through the jewelry that I have consecrated to her. I think that's it. I think that's where we are now. Second question by Astra. What is something you are currently diving into and excited to experiment with? I have got a more than good experience doing tarot workshops here in Cardiff. I think I started to do it back in like November, December. I did the first because the idea was, oh, with the excuse I can find other people that are local to me that have my same interests. And I do them for free, like I'm not paid for them to keep the cost low. And so that it just pays for the building basically that we do it in. And I just thought that the point would have been meeting people with similar interests. Something that I did not realize until the second workshop is that just by being there and having to tell the story of tarot in a way that it's understandable to people that, for all I know, could know nothing, so let me start from the beginning, makes me understand those things better. So something that I like to dive more in is having these kind of experiences, maybe through workshops, maybe through lessons, courses, because given my tendency to have transformed everything that comes from witchcraft into my special interest in the last 2 years, I've done a lot of research, I've done a lot of reading, but doing those kind of things is part of what, if it doesn't necessarily put it into practice, it makes me think about it enough and then put it into different words that makes me understand it better. So it's a step towards putting into practice. So that's what I'm trying to dive in. And feeling the responsibility of teaching someone or bringing to someone knowledge of something that potentially is the first time that they meet makes me hold very accountable for the quality of what I do and how I try to do it, rather than just do it in my room. So the 3D part, I guess, interaction with others, and therefore by teaching having the responsibility of being not only knowledgeable but practicing, that's what I like, and that's what I want to do more this year. Last question from Astra. What's a weird thing you do for something that seems counter to the popular witchy recommendation? I think definitely getting into deity work as soon as I have is something that from the wider community you hear, no, how dare you, newbie, you don't know what you're doing, have you thought about protection, have you thought about... Which I get. Like, I am definitely someone that likes to overread, over-prepare. I didn't search, I didn't look for a deity. I had no intention of starting a deity work or deity relationship. It happened because at the time it was necessary. Again, I was being evicted, there was a huge issue related to house and home, and therefore kind of made sense that Vesta came forward. As I mentioned, I don't remember if it's in the Vesta on the Venus video, but Vesta and Venus are the two deities that I work with. And thankfully, one of the silver linings of my autism is that it comes very natural for me to ritualize things. It has good and bads out of it. Maybe we'll go into it later because I have some questions about autism and how it applies to my craft. Put it this way, I don't know because I don't talk to Vesta or Venus. But if you were to ask me, why did they come to me? Amongst other reasons, I would tell you, because they knew that I am consistent. Because they knew that I would be extremely well devoted and reliable as a devotee, that they would always get a certain level of reliability from me. And I think that that's something that it's relevant in the part of the exchange that you have when you work with a deity, when it's just not worship. Like, you ask them something, you give them something, and I'm very consistent in my giving. So it wasn't necessarily what the witchcraft community would have advised to do, but so far so good. Now we go into the anonymous questions that I got for the generic witchy stuff. Do you know any books that explain the meanings of correspondences and why they are used? That explain? That's a very interesting point. Not necessarily that explain. Like, I know of the classics. There's the big book of correspondences by Llewellyn. There's another one that I've heard of, but I haven't had a chance to read. And a lot of beginners' books have a part on correspondences. I am not sure that I've ever found something that necessarily tells you rosemary is protective because of this, and this. Same with lavender. Like, I know that some things overlap with superstition. So rosemary and lavender, well before or beyond witchcraft, you will notice are usually bushes in front gardens of houses that have front gardens. Because even when you're not a witch, traditionally, superstitiously, you knew that rosemary and lavender in the entrance are good to have. Why? Because they're protective. Why are they protective? That's a very good question. Things like mugwort, for example, we know that there are compounds inside of it that then have a physical effect. And so mugwort is considered a plant for psychic vision because actually there's a compound in it that has a certain effect on our brains. It's not like an hallucinogenic of any kind, but it sort of increases the activity of our synapses, so everything fires a bit more. And probably that's why it helps with more vivid dreams, or when you do meditation, supposedly more vivid visualization. So those sometimes are the explanations. Something interesting is to look more into the overlap, in my experience, of like herbalism and the biochemistry of plants. Because usually whatever kind of superstition you have on something, like for example, do not quote me on this, something just fired in my brain. I think the point of rosemary being protective is that there's a compound in it that is antibacterial, which would make sense. It protects health from maladies even before they knew what bacteria were, and therefore it's protective. Like, it's that kind of thing. The main thing that occurs to me is for herbs, as you can tell. In stuff like color magic, I think the original correspondences come from like very old books, like the Agrippa books, the Key of Solomon books, which I haven't dived a lot into, but there should be the explanations as to why. I think that William Lilly, Christian astrology, which is based on Ptolemy and on the Key of Solomon, all those things, has those kind of things. So you have to dig a bit deeper. Like, there are huge compendiums, but to actually get the reason why a correspondent is such, it's something that requires a bit of personal research, in my experience. Do you have a hard time interacting with Wiccan-centered things, given how appropriative it all is? I don't think I know anything about Wicca. It's not something that I have direct experience of. I don't know enough to answer this, to be honest with you. So I'll do what's best in that situation and saying, I don't know. We don't need to know everything and talk about everything. If there's ignorance, it's okay to admit. But I'm curious now about appropriation and stuff in Wicca, so if you feel like dropping some sources on that, I'll be happy to research that now. Have you ever considered working with primordial forces, like death or love as a force, and not love or death deities? Witch of Wanderlust talks about working with death as a force. I need to get into Olivia's stuff because it would be part of the process that I need to go through in order to overcome my thanatophobia. I tend to anthropomorphize everything though. Like, before witchcraft, it's just a thing that I do. I think accidentally I am an animist, so I would have a hard time not precipitating the concept of death, love, prosperity into a figure. I would have been one of those in antiquity that worked on theogony. I would have written the theogony, basically. I'm that kind of person, so not quite. What is your favorite magical medium to work with, like herbs or divination? So, as I mentioned, I think in my first video, my most present practice is split in three main things. Deity work, that I do daily, ancestral work, that I keep active, and divination, mainly through tarot. I do like divination mostly because I was exposed to it when I was very, very young. I love the concept of ancestral work because in my unluckiness of being a survivor of childhood abuse, I was lucky enough to be raised by my grandparents though, and they were incredible people. Something that my wife recently has explained to me is how trauma forms in the brain after traumatic events, and those are two different things. And if a traumatic event happens to you, it doesn't necessarily have to become trauma in your brain if you get the support to work through it from the people around you. And I think despite stuff that happened to me, I am relatively well adjusted, very modestly, because my grandparents were amazing to me, made me feel loved, didn't make me feel like the rest of the world made me feel, like not enough no matter what I did. So anything that makes me feel closer to them, it's something that I don't need to get something from. Just the fact that I had a chance to go through the old pictures of my grandparents to then create the ancestor altar, it's so beautiful, it makes me feel more close to them. So that's definitely one of my favorite things. I like deity work because I've practiced gratitude forever, not as an effort, not awarely. Every time that something good happened to me, I always said thanks to something. And at some point around the age of 12 or 13, I started to say thanks fate. And to this day, I'm very, very convinced, I'll go more into it because I think there's a question specifically about it, that there's an entity that looked out for me. And that's why every time that something good happened, to this day, I still thank. And I think so that's why it's easier for me to deal with the idea of deities, or there's something, someone bigger. I have much harder time conceding to the concept of the higher self because it's just me. Also, I'm a lazy witch a lot of times. So, medium for spells, candles, and petitions usually, because it takes pen, paper, and a candle. And that's very basic, and that I can do, even with low spoons. Do you feel that every time you go to celebrate a holiday on the wheel of the year, you get a little more attached to the celebration? Are there any notable things you've learned from this appreciation? Has the sentiment brought any abundance to your life? So I do not necessarily celebrate strictly with the wheel of the year. Sometimes I do. Sometimes it's really an excuse to see my coven, because officially we meet each other for Sabbats and Esbats. But it's really just an excuse to meet, to see and meet like-minded people, which the people from my coven are. We celebrated Yule at ours. We made Yule logs, if you've seen the video that I've done for the 12 days of Yule. And it's just nice to feel this sense of community for me. I've celebrated Lita on my own, with my wife, basically, on the last summer solstice. And I had the entire day planned. Like, the Lita book from Llewellyn had 4 spells to do, 1 for each element throughout the day, and I did that. And it didn't feel nearly as something that stuck with me and gave me emotion and I carry something with, as the ones that I've had the chance to spend with my coven. So I think ultimately is the answer to the meaning of life, which is connection to me, which makes me think that's something that I might really like one day, if we cannot all meet in person because we might be scattered around the world, maybe doing live streams on the Sabbats and Esbats so that we can still celebrate together. And it's just a celebration of coming together. I was really stuck in my mindset at the beginning of, there's such a power in a date like this, you need to work magic. Yes, there are spells to do, like when we were here at Yule with my coven, we did a spell together. But the most important thing is the coming together as a community for me. Like, that's what stuck with me the most, that's the beautiful sensation that stuck with me. So let me know, maybe in time it might be worth to celebrate together and so come together here. Let me know what you think. Congratulations on 1,000 subscribers! How did you find your path? Where did you start your practice? I started to practice because my cat died, Whiska. I speak about it a bit in my first video. I don't know if I've actually just done a video about it. I don't know if I'm ready. It's been almost 2 years and I don't know if I'm ready. So the reason why I started was that we had this sudden, horrible loss in the family. And my family is really important to me. It's all I have. I built this. I don't have blood relatives anymore around. So what I built is very, 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 very important. Everything is chosen. It's that important. And the fact that Whiska could be unwell without me knowing, understanding, or in a way protecting him well enough is something that made it very apparent and urgent to me that I need to work harder to protect what I have, to protect the people that I love, to protect the creatures that I love, which right now is my wife, my friends, my cats. So I got into practicing because I wanted to protect. First spell I ever did was a protection spell. Protection spells are still the main thing. Like, the most consistent thing that I do is cleansing and protecting. That's all I care about, really, at the end of the day. I just need to keep my family safe. Very selfishly, but yeah. Like, in my perception, no one else is ever going to die on my watch. That's not allowed. Looking back, are there moments in your life that you now realize were profoundly magical, or where you felt you tapped into some kind of power greater than yourself before beginning your magical practice? I actually wanted to make a video about this. A couple of times I think I've given the option in the weekly polls, and then it didn't get enough votes and I just left it behind. But as I mentioned before about the gratitude and the feeling that there was this entity or entities or something bigger that looked out for me, that I personally called fate. It's because absurd things have happened in my life with a degree that is beyond luck. It's beyond the luck with which you win the lottery to a degree. Those things don't happen to someone in my position, but they did. And they revolutionized my life. And Stella, is there something here? Is there something that has heard me talk and you're seeing them and I don't? I'm very far from the idea of my life as being perfect. Absolutely not. There are incredibly damaging and painful situations that I've gone through. But, and here's the reason why I'm still grateful, I like where I am now. I see the luck in being here now. I see the luck in the things that have happened and the paths that they put me onto. There's a very good chance that if I didn't have my entire life broken down and risked homelessness 10 years ago, I wouldn't have met my wife. Our paths would not have crossed if I hadn't been in that specific position. And this is for the best. So I am relatively good at also looking back and not revision, but appreciate that's fine. I think there's this time that it happened live, so to speak. Something supposedly bad happened, and right in the moment that it happened, I was able to understand, and I actually wrote it in my journal, so that's why I know that it happened live. I was grateful because that thing had gone that way, which wasn't my way, because at that point I had already such experience of things are meant to go this way because it ends up well for me. I had this absolute blind belief, and I remember being in the tube in London, writing and taking notes on my phone, able to say, I know that this is for the best. I know that fate hasn't failed me so far. So I know that it's for the best. I just don't see where this is going yet. And it might also be a kind of survivor bias because I'm still here. But magical things have happened, inexplicable things. No one should be in the position that I am now, which doesn't seem much because you're a disabled, autistic witch relying on welfare, and you're not in a necessarily safe on the long-term situation. You don't necessarily have a career to speak of. Like, it's not from the external point of view. If you look in a very practical, capitalistic way, it doesn't seem like a great position to be in. But I'm so grateful for the eyes that I have because they let me see how disproportionately lucky I am for where I come from. You count the blessings of the distance, not the score, not the final score. And the distance that I have come from my village of 600 people lost in the countryside on northwest Italy, where I was the only person that wasn't white, it's fine. Everything will be good. Do you work with the elements? If so, which is your favorite to work with and which do you feel most connected to? I think I have to say fire. I don't work necessarily a lot with the elements per se. It's not something that I have explored. But because I love candle magic, it's simple, it's direct. I also make candles. Like on my Etsy shop, there are beeswax candles that I make, that I started to make because we didn't have beeswax candle with a wooden wick in the UK. And I wanted to scry because a way to scry with Vesta is through fire because, hello, goddess of fire. So I do have this connection with fire, I think. I have this fascination every time that there's the chance to actually be in front of a real fireplace. Oh, it's hypnotic. Also, interestingly, most of my planets in my birth charts are in signs of fire. Fire is the most prominent element in my chart, so might also be that. Fire! Have you done any work at combining your inherited traditions, Italian witchcraft, with the practices, energies and deities of Cymru? And if so, could you share what you learned, including if it doesn't work, if that's the case? So, if you don't know, I have a triple heritage. I was born in Italy and raised within Italian witchcraft, but my father is Egyptian, so there's all the Kemetic stuff technically, although I don't have personal first-hand knowledge yet. And I am Welsh. I have become British in Wales, which to my understanding makes me Welsh. If you will ask me, I will say that I am Welsh. So there's also that now. I haven't had a chance quite yet. I've been very fascinated by the understanding that I got of the magic of Welsh through the work of Mara Starling, which is the Welsh witch. And honestly, if anybody from Visit Cymru is ever watching one of my videos, please hire this woman as your best advertisement you could possibly have. Nobody advertises and shows Wales better than Mara Starling. I'm a bit of a fangirl, I'm sorry. And I'm fascinated in the way that she explained things in a very scholarly way, simple, but with sources, and the explanation of, oh, you know, these were archetypes that come from bardic traditions. They weren't necessarily seen as deities. However, nowadays we see Ceridwen as a deity rather than an archetype that comes from a story, That is extremely fascinating to me. However, probably due to the autistic way that I approach things with special interest, I need to finish studying other things before I get into Celtic lore. And the thing that I'm focusing on at the moment is developing my psychic ability, which is not my greatest aptitude, so I want to develop that. And until I develop that to a better level, that's where I'm focusing on. Name a place you've been to that isn't supposed to be witchy, but you found it really witchy for some reason. Like Tintern Abbey, which is in the Wye Valley. I don't think it's supposed to be witchy because it's supposed to be a Catholic abbey that then was left to decay because Britain went along with Henry VIII toward Protestantism, so the churches were disbanded and that kind of thing. But I guess when it's something that big, that sustained the passage of time for that long, there's something hanging there. That's my feeling. Given that religions and spirituality tend to be products of their time and place, in which ways do you modify your practice to be more compatible with the modern world? Similarly, what modern systems of belief do you think may be looked back on 1,000 years from now, the way that we do with Norse mythology, for instance? So the first point of how do I adapt my practice? Well, consider that I work with deities, for example, that in my version come from the Roman pantheon. Do I work with them and worship them the way that they would have done in 800 AD when Rome was founded? Unlikely. I think there's more of a maintenance of a mood. That's what I do. Like, of course, there's not the Temple of Vesta for me to go and worship. There's a lot of adapting. And so, for example, most of the stuff that I found on both my Vesta and Venus altar come from charity shops, thrift stores, secondhand on eBay, and usually something that I see to think, oh, this goes on the altar. It's because it has something that gives me the mood. So I don't quite know how I extrapolate the mood of Vesta or the mood of Venus. For Venus, it's something to do with pastels. Everything that is pastely and nice and delicate tells me Venus. And to be fair, that way I also overcrowded the altar. I think last time she was kind of like, that's enough, you need to slim this down. For Vesta, I didn't realize at the beginning. I thought that red and fire were our mood. But I realized in time that I have this feeling that gold associates with that as well. How? I don't know. I just know. That's how I work with these things. So that's why when I saw the golden tea light holders, I was like, this is clearly for Vesta. There's the part of I don't know, and so probably it's UPG. I know that I know, but I don't know how I know. And so I try to go along with that mood. How or what will be seen the way that we see the antique pantheons in 1,000 years? I worry that organized religion might be what remains seen that way, because things have moved towards a more secular way through the use of science, which is great, don't get me wrong. I am obsessed with answers, and everything that felt like magic in the 1800s that has been since explained with science doesn't take away from the fact that the end result is the same. So the idea that alcohol kills bacteria, but we didn't know what bacteria were before the 1800s. So why was alcohol safer than water in some things? Was that considered magic? Was that why we were using wine in church? Is it any less valuable now that we know the process? The simple fact that we know the process doesn't mean that the process isn't a gift from anyone that decided that that's how chemistry works. I don't know if there's a lot that will be seen in 1,000 years looking back to now, as in particularly spiritual or religious, just because we are moving in a different direction. Even spirituality, something like witchcraft, which can be secular or spiritual, by all means, it doesn't have to be a religion. I don't think that that is the most prominent part. And I guess that's the reason why witchcraft can be secular. It doesn't have to be connected to spirituality. So I don't think that there's gonna be something as big and organized as we are used to look at the past, because we have many more answers, and those will go on more than how they needed to make explanations through archetypes, the antique Greek or Roman people. Let me know what you think. Do you feel like the surge in popularity of witchcraft is problematic in any way? I can't say that I have noticed that. Is it? I'm saying that because seeing the popularity in terms of numbers of the most popular, like influencers or content creators that do stuff on witchcraft, it's very much still a niche. Then there's TikTok, and I'm an elder, so I don't understand TikTok, but TikTok trends, for what I understand, come and go, so... Okay, here's an example of why I think it's always good to get a message as wide as possible, doesn't matter the means or the medium, which includes TikTok for this. 10 years ago or something like that, something similar happened with Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, and I think Ed Sheeran, or someone of those likes, did a cover, and the fans of Ed Sheeran, the teenagers, I guess? I don't know, I don't listen to Ed Sheeran. It's the first time that they encountered Stairway to Heaven. What an amazing song, it's gonna change my life. Oh shoot, it's actually Led Zeppelin, there's more to look into. So it doesn't matter what the Trojan horse is to get to know something. Whatever way it gets to you, amazing, that's a great thing, because then you can dive into it. So I don't think that popularity is a bad thing, per se. It's then the way that we decide to approach it, and we can decide to just write it as a trend, and so of course it will be superficial. Or actually it's something that hits us, and we want to actually learn more, and then who knows how many witches will actually become properly scholarly witches because they found accidentally a Witchtok. So bring it. Are you in any magic or witchcraft Discord servers? I am, but I don't remember them all, so I'm gonna open Discord. Mostly of other content creators. So I am in Aster Perpetua's Discord server, which I think is just for our patrons though. So mind, it's worth going to support Aster. I am in the Hearth Witch Discord server. I am in the Hawthorne lane, which I think it's Anna Hawthorne's, but I'm not often there. I am in Tarot with Ruby. I am in the Black Cat Coven. Don't remember how I got there. I am in the Library of Mysteries. I am in the Test Tube and Cauldrons Discord server. And I am in the Warrior Witch Coven of Nike Witch. Those are the Discords that I'm on. I am not a great Discord creature, but I use Discord often because the main way that I message my wife is through Discord. Like, we don't use other messenger kind. So yeah, those are the Discords that I can recommend. Hearth Witch is definitely the most active, so if you want to, and there's a channel, a room for everything, so I can recommend that. That concludes the witchy part. We're now going into activism. Does it ever feel isolating to include activism in your practice? It feels that way for me sometimes. So I am lucky in that because before starting to practice witchcraft, the circles that I was going around anyway were very queer, very left field. So the first people that I asked and learned about, oh my gosh, are you a pagan as well? We're already within these circles. As queer people, we can hardly stand still and not be activists. Our existence is activism. So I was lucky in that sense. We are already marginalized, we already start off with that mindset. To be fair, and I speak that as a person that comes from multiple marginalizations, at the beginning it might seem an inconvenience to have a characteristic or do something that marginalizes you. The main things that stood out to me looking back at my childhood and young adulthood were being fat and being a person of color. And people genuinely told to my face, I cannot be your friend because if I am, I will be targeted as well as you are. And I can't afford that. It's not worth it. I can't take that kind of bullying onto myself if I can choose differently. And of course, marginalization identities is not something that you choose, it's something that you are. However, not only in hindsight, like I sort of had the perception back then as well, it is frustrating when it ends up being isolating because all the people that you have around have that mindset and you're like, is there no one decent here that understands what is worth standing for? And that must feel extremely isolating. If you have a chance to go into context where it's likely that you meet more like-minded people, all those marginalizations become a superpower because they do the work for you in cutting off people that is not worth to have around if they think that you being an activist for human rights is a bad thing. You being a person of color is a bad thing. You being queer is a bad thing, and why don't you just do it in the privacy of your bedroom? Those are very good natural filters. But I do appreciate that until you find people that are closer to you in wavelength, it might feel very isolating. And I am sorry. And if it helps, at least virtually I'm here. So feel free. There's my email, and you can send me messages through coffee for free. Do get in touch. Feel free. As activist witches, we're here, no matter where in the world. It's not as going out and having a coffee, but hey, at least we can. I'm here. You spoke of the power in collective intention when hundreds of thousands of people are working towards a single goal. If you could unite the entire witchy community around a single cause, what would it be? Equity. For everyone. Equity is how you equalize the world for all the injustice that there is. So equity is giving the access needed to be at the same level to everyone. I talk about it in the Palestine video. Maybe take a look at that. Worth it, if I may say so myself. Oh, I got a question from Ecozines. I'm very curious to know more about how you mix magic and activism. Could you give some examples of how you use witchcraft or magic for activism, if that's something that you do? So, one thing is literally this. Where did I mention it recently? I think I mentioned it in the chat that I had with Aster Perpetua. So if you go check out her video that we did together on her channel, it's something that I mentioned. Doing videos about my witchcraft practice, which also include naturally part of my mindset and principles, and therefore the things that I stand for, seem to be an interest bringing together of maybe things that people within the witchcraft community, especially if they're white and straight, might have not encountered themselves. But I do believe that they have the right mindset to understand them. People have the perception that privilege is a negative thing and you need to be ashamed of it. Privilege is innate. It's why it's privilege. It's just given because you are born with certain characteristics. So it's not something to be ashamed or anything. It's something to understand so that you can put it at the service of those who don't have it, because you hold more respect in the world, in the white, cis, het, patriarchal, able, rich, wealthy world that is made for that kind of person. So if you have any of these privileges, it's not a bad thing, but if you understand that you have it, you can put it to the service of people who don't, people who are listened to less because they are considered less credible or less relevant. If you have any of that kind of privilege, elevating other voices, it's a great thing to do. And something that I'm trying to do here, first video that I made, I talk about an experience that I had in a very white community within the pagan circles here in Wales. That wasn't a good experience for me, but it taught me something. Something that it taught me was that even white, cishet, able, privileged people that are involved in paganism and witchcraft though, have one understanding, if nothing else, one understanding of something that is going wrong in the world, which has to do with the environment and ecology, and it's the way that the planet has been depleted by capitalism. Whoever has that understanding has the potential to understand how all the other bad things that go on with the world are connected the same way. Ableism is oppression the same way. Racism is oppression the same way. Transphobia, homophobia are oppression the same way. You have this beautiful thing, which is the planet, and to extract value out of it without reason, we are destroying it. And it was interesting to see white people feeling oppressed by something like that, which is good. So if you start off being mad for what capitalism has done at the planet, there's a very good chance that you can become an amazing ally for LGBT people, for disabled people, for people of color, for people that are working class if you're not. Like all these things can come together. And you already have a beautiful seed to build upon. So that's why I make these videos. So that through witchcraft, you can also be exposed to maybe things that you never met before or thought about, but if I make anything even remotely slightly click at the back of your head, most of my job here is done. And then, as I mentioned, I am lucky enough to accidentally have ended up in a coven that is here local to Cardiff. We wanted to call ourselves at some point the South Wales Anarchist Coven because that's the kind of mindset that we all are upon. So there is that kind of magic activism that we do together simply for the fact that partially we exist. So we are pagan, queer witches. What you gonna do about it? We exist. The simple fact that we exist give proof to other people that that is an option, that you can be queer, you can be a witch, you can be a person of color, and there's no limit to that. Which is the reason why, if you notice, something that reactionary people on the right tend to do is not wanting information out. I swear I didn't plan to talk about this. Something that the culture wars that have happened here in the UK have put a lot of attention on is how the existence of trans people is what is transing kids. Translation. Because kids are being exposed through media, through culture, to the simple fact that trans people exist, they can exist. They are, according to TERFs, transed, converted, and there's completely unscientific shit like rapid onset gender dysphoria, something like that. Actually scientifically not real, but they try to make it sound real. What it means is if you keep people ignorant, they have a harder time understanding a lot of the world, including themselves. So usually what the right wants to do is cut off or forbid certain kind of information. If you don't know that another option exists, you will keep being in the role that other people have made for you. So that's why speaking up about the things that I've learned and experienced seems important, because I guess it's the only silver lining of being at the intersection of so many marginalized identities. As a disabled person, as a person of color, as a femme-presenting person, as a fat person, there could be more, but like that's what I try. As an immigrant, as someone whose English is not the first language, should we talk about intersectionality? Let me know. The silver lining of this lived experience, and also the ability that I have through probably partially my autism in very much focusing without letting go, is that I read a lot of feminist theory, I read a lot of sociology, I read a lot of psychology stuff. I can connect the dots. And if I can connect the dots and present it to you in a simple way enough that something clicks in your head, that's my activism. You have the information and then you decide what to do. I'm not telling you what to do. I give you information, usually I always give you receipts, because if I say something is not necessarily relevant, who the fuck am I to tell you something? But maybe you didn't know about the situation in Palestine being only 100 years old, not millennia old, not because we're going in biblical time with the kingdom of Israel 5,000 years ago. Maybe you didn't know that. Maybe the fact that I've linked more than one book on the matter prompted you to look into it, and now you can make up your own mind about what the situation is. Is it a colonial issue, or is it a right of defense issue from Israel? You decide. When I go to protest, as I mentioned in the Palestine video, it costs me nothing to think that all that energy is being raised anyway. I have an easy, relatively, time to visualize. Let's focus this energy in a cone that goes up. I visualize the globe, I see Palestine, and I hope that this golden energy gets there and does something good, whether it's protection for Palestinian people, whether it's healing, whether it's, I don't know how it actually needs to manifest, but there's a lot of it. We need to do something with it. Energy manipulation is what we do as witches, no? Okay, we're gonna go into neurodivergence and autism. I love your personal style, how it has evolved over time. Did you always dress that way? I put this into autism because I think that my style depends on it. It could have been a personal question, but I genuinely think that that's the answer. Has it ever evolved? There was a time that I didn't know I could dress with certain things. I didn't know that those things were available. So there's a process of discovery there. When I discovered black milk, which I think was 2015, a new world opened to me. Unfortunately now, due to Brexit, it's not really doable to buy stuff from black milk, which is Australian, anymore, and that breaks my heart every time. But no, I just like very colorful things. This is actually the oldest thing that I own, and kind of reveals its age, eh? So I don't know, is this how I dress? I don't know. Would you say that this is still within my style? I don't know. My style is defined by that is in my wardrobe and I wear it. After meeting my wife, I've leaned more into my gothy side as well. I didn't know that I was a goth before her, because I didn't know that those clothes existed, but you know, if they're cool. So yeah, it just... I also have no shame, in the sense that I don't have an office job. And even when I had an office job, it wasn't in a context that required me to wear a suit. So that kind of structural way to think of clothes that you're supposed to wear because of where you are never got to me, and I'm really lucky for that, I guess. As an autistic person as well, do you have any tips for how to not take it personally when people seem to think your craft isn't as valid as theirs? I need to make a premise for any allistic neurotypical people that are watching this. Autism is a spectrum. So two people can be autistic and not necessarily share traits. In my case, I don't understand the effect that someone else's opinion can have on me. I don't necessarily know why. Peer pressure has never worked on me. Probably because, and that doesn't have to do with autism, it has to do with how I survived in a white village and white town for the first decade of my life. Because there was not enough stuff that I could do to be valid anyway, because nothing would have cancelled the fact that I was a person of color in a very white, very racist place. You try to people please to a certain level, or I tried. And then when you realize there's not enough that I can do to please you, so why does your opinion matter? And that's also the reason why I don't have a problem being a YouTuber. I have done stuff on YouTube for over 10 years now, in a way or another. And something that made me realize back in the day that I could do this was because I was very close to other people who were YouTubers. And I could see how badly affected they would get by negative comments, or even, at the time, the thumbs down. You could see the thumbs down publicly. Now only the creators can, but people were losing sleep on that, the offense that they would take. And I don't know if it evolved from my childhood, basically, of being exposed to people who don't like me for intrinsic characteristics that I have, no matter how much I work on being good. That started to be very clear in my head about the fact that you need to know what the values and principles of a person are before their judgment can become valuable to you. A stranger that tells me, "Oh, you're not a witch," means absolutely nothing to me, because for all I know, in their free time, they could drown kittens. Why would I ever care about the opinion of someone whose values I don't know? On the other hand, for the people that then I know and they are my friends and I understand how they see the world and I respect it and I look up to them, oh, their opinion becomes important to me. But at that point, if we have come to that place, they surely are nice and kind enough people to not be judgmental of that kind of thing, but if anything, to be interested and curious. So I don't know if that answers the question from the autism point of view, but that is the kind of answer that I can give on the matter of people judging. We're going queer in here. Aisha, I was wondering, how did you discover that you were non-binary? And does your identity as a queer person have an impact on your witchcraft and spirituality? If so, what are the main ways your identity has shaped your practice? I do wonder if we need to do a video about this. Probably we do. I think the answer is going to be too long. It does affect my practice in how liberating is not to have a binary choice, but considering things in a spectrum. And most of nature is on a spectrum, so understanding that my identity could also be a slider rather than this or that has been incredibly liberating. It's like you keep to see the world within a square frame, and you know that those are the limits, those are the borders. And then all of a sudden, you understand that, oh, that is the frame that has been chosen, but the world continues outside. And so you start to take this frame apart, and there's world and possibilities to the infinite that you can't even see with your eye. That's what understanding my queer identity allowed me to see. And it applies to everything, which is probably the reason why I adore Radical Tarot. What Charlie does in that book is applying that process to every archetype that seemed strict, and showing, oh, but that's just because you're looking at this very limited view of this. If you take the frame out, there's so much more. And that affects everything in my life. It's so freeing. What is your relation to your gender? Do you prefer really specific micro-labels, no labels at all, or a mix of both? So recently I've had to specify queer non-binary just because a thing that I did in my 3D life out there was actually related to an event that is by and for trans people. Before that, I just liked to define myself as queer, as in gender and sexuality. So just not what you expect by just looking at me. Like, queer is beyond. I am queer in the sense that I am gender queer, so neither on the total female or total male side of the spectrum, and I am queer in the sense that am I pan-romantic? I don't know. I tend to say that I am raven romantic and raven sexual. You make of that what you will. We're going into personal stuff, and hopefully this video will end. Cathy, I had a lot of questions for Cathy. So, who edits the video? I do. Are you both photographers and videographers? No, Raven is a trained photographer. We both have worked into video production for a decade now. What are your other artistic expressions? YouTube is my main thing. For Raven is definitely photography, but also she draws, she's a actual practical artist. She also plays music, she can play instruments, I can't. I write and do spoken word. I was forgetting about that. How do you share your sparkle with your community? How do they show you true appreciation? The way Raven sees you through the lens and the way you light up the room is pure love. Oh, thank you. I think the reason why we are so well matched and have been together a decade now, it's indeed that we see each other the way that the other needs to be seen and understood, and we love each other the way that the other understands love, which is not to be taken for granted. We tend to come as an item, but pretty much everything that we do as a team, as a partnership. So we are very good at helping each other and allowing the other to be comfortable enough to reach their maximum potential, which in the outside world, as we are both neurodivergent, is challenging and complicated. In your video on why you don't hex, you covered so many good points as always. I understand the perspective that you shared about your energy and how it's spent. Also that positive vibrations and resonance are the way. How can we as a community organize ourselves and build up our powerful collective consciousness to create compound, explicit and consensuous effort as a magical means to our intentions? So there are two things. If you have a chance to be around people physically in the 3D world that you share a mindset with, that also are interested or witchy inclined, it's definitely worth do something together. Even the simplest thing of, you know what, we're meeting up, we're talking about what to do. There are plenty of people that I have dealt with in the last few months that are not necessarily witchy inclined, but the reasons why we meet and talk is about, okay, what are we going to do to raise funds for Palestine? What are we going to do to raise awareness? What are we going to do to educate? Da, 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 da. Those are not necessarily witchy inclined people, but we come together with a common intention and we put energy in it. And that is magic to me. What is, if not intention? And you put energy into that intention to make something happen. Just saying. And then if you're lucky enough to actually have people around that are also witchy inclined, whether they are physically around or, you know what, I know of plenty of digital covens where then the point is we gather together at the same time, or we don't even need to gather together, but we decide at a certain time, that is the same for everyone considering time zones, we're gonna meditate or spend like 10 minutes envisioning our energy, going up, meeting the others, and then focusing on a common goal. What's the worst that can happen if you do that? The point of magic is that is ineffable. It's hard to tangibly verify. If things get better for half a second in a tremendous situation, like, well, not even gas anymore now, like Rafa, is because we were at the protest, is it not? I'd better go just in case that actually does something. I have the same or similar question twice, so I'll gather them together. An anonymous question asked me, what is your favorite music genre? And then Ecozins asked me, I'm also curious about what music you listen to. Sorry, it's not really witch or activism related, but maybe it can be. It can. I used to work in music. Music is extremely important to me. Music is the only thing that before magic made me realize there is something of big energy that is inexplicable, therefore is magic. I would advise anyone, if they have never listened to them, to listen to, in no specific order, the Cranberries, the Veils, go on, the Libertines, why not? I was also on the top 0.1% listeners of Metrics in 2023, to the point that I got a personal message through Spotify about Metrics saying, oh my God, thank you for listening to us. You're so welcome, guys. More recent, there's Florence and the Machine. I say recent is just because 2009. Placebo. How could I forget that? The Airborne Toxic Event. The Lumineers. Pulp. Nick Cave. Embrace, Black Honey, Yeah Yeah Yeahs, The Pains of Being Pure at Heart, Camera Obscura, Nina Simone, Sigur Rós, Gossip, Group Love, Stars, Neutral Milk Hotel, I'm such a hipster, Sea Power, formerly British Sea Power, but they are decent, so they dropped the British, Biffy Clyro, Against Me, The Killers, Foo Fighters, Smashing Pumpkins. I mean, fascinating choices. If out of these you want to go and listen to one song to understand the person that I am, I will always recommend to go listen to Calliope by the Veils. You're welcome. Is it too personal to ask what signs you both are? So both Raven and I are Aquarius. Aquariuses? What? Aquari? Aquarius, Aquari. But that's pretty much everything that we share in our birth charts. Then, very peculiarly, our birth charts literally go to show that we are two halves of the same apple. We have opposite birth charts, we compensate. How did you meet your wife? We met on OkCupid. I was about to cancel OkCupid. I had been on Tinder for 6 months. Tinder, I didn't know what it was, and then I realized it's just a place for fuckboys. Oh gosh. And then I did OkCupid, and I've been there for like a day and a half, and I was like, this is not worth it, I'm cool, I'm fine. And I guess the night before, like the next day I would have deleted it. And the night before that, I saw this beautiful person that comes to see my profile but doesn't come speak to me. And I'm like, I'm not gonna let you get away, you look too fucking cool. And so I went and picked them from here, like a cat. I was like, where are you going? And that's almost 10 years ago. Last question! This came from Instagram, from Irena Supreme, which asks me, what do you look forward to in this dragon year? What do I expect from this year? As I mentioned probably at the beginning, it goes full circle, how cool. I hope to do more things in my 3D real life that allows me to connect with like-minded people that have witchcraft and activism at the heart of what they do. And also maybe to bring a sense of community or do like virtual events that allow people that have this mindset, like you that you're watching probably, no matter where we are in the world, so that if we do like live streams or stuff like that, we can be for a time together with found and shared intention, energy and emotions. That would be nice, wouldn't it? This is already too long, so I'm not gonna longify the ending. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you at the next video. And go check out the community tab, because finally we are back with the polls, so you can decide what next Monday video is going to be about. And until then, I hope that we can axe the patriarchy together, because there's need for it!